It was just this Christmas that went by, and things were getting busy. I had to start buying presents for the whole family. I just finished shopping, but I still needed to grab a present for my little cousin. She was not very hard to shop for since my cousin is 4 and she likes things like the usual Peppa Pig and, of course, My Little Pony. But one she really liked, and I say liked for a reason, was Max and Ruby. So when I decided to go looking for a present, I figured something like Max and Ruby DVD would have been the perfect since she liked to watch it on a daily basis. However, Christmas meant that many of the online DVDs were sold out on most places. I went looking on eBay and as well, but I figured I could not trust what condition the DVDs would have been in. So I was stuck in a rut for a while. Until one day, a package arrived. I was at home still scrolling through the stupid DVD until I heard a sound of something being pushed into my letterbox. I caught a hold of it before the dog did and looked at it. The package, it seemed to be wrapped fairly badly with what looked like grease marks and stains on it. Naturally, as anyone would, I decided to open the package. Inside was something that I could not explain. It was a Max and Ruby DVD, but I had never seen one like this online before. It was like some little kid had drawn on the front cover with a marker. The title was just Max and Ruby, with what looked like a poorly drawn illustration of Max and Ruby. On the front there was no names or anything, but on the back it had a list of 4 episodes, all with blunt titles. Episode 1, Episode 2, Episode 3, and Episode 4. I quickly gave the DVD a watch over. To my surprise, all the episodes were in perfect quality. It seemed to have no flaws. It was as if someone had a real DVD and just put a homemade cover on it. The only thing I thought appeared odd was the episode selection. The only thing that was odd was the episode selection screen. The episodes had names, but they were all titled Max and Ruby 1, with numbers being changed as it went down. The actual selection screen was just a plain white screen of black text and nothing else. After giving it much thought, I decided to change the cover to something a little bit nicer by printing a DVD cover that I had found on Google and tracked down the names of the episodes so they were labeled correctly. I left the episode selection screen alone because I figured it was self-explanatory. Christmas went by and things were fine. I gave my cousin her DVD and she was very happy with it all through Christmas, but that was only because she hadn't watched it yet. On Boxing Day, the family had gone out for lunch and left me to babysit my cousin. I was not too bothered by it being left at home. I figured it was just a good time to put on the DVD for her, and I had put the DVD in and allowed it to play while I was in the kitchen eating my dinner. From what I could hear, she had watched episodes 1, 2, 3 so far. I was just about to finish my noodles when I heard my cousin scream. From the other room, I dropped everything I had done and run to the living room. And I saw my cousin curled up on the floor screaming. I looked up at the TV and felt my heart in my throat. What I caught a glimpse of was one of the most horrifying things I had ever seen. It was what appeared to be a frame of Max and Ruby standing next to each other. But they were standing in complete darkness. What made this so horrible was their lack of faces. They had lost their nose and mouths, and their eyes were replaced with big black holes. The colors were disgusting blood red, and there was a faint static in the background. The sound was replaced with what sounded like the Max and Ruby theme playing back. The faint sound of static in the mix of it all. It had to be the most disturbing thing I had ever seen. And it must have been on screen for at least 20 seconds before the screen went black and our television set turned off. Which alone was weird because the TVs don't usually turn off by themselves. I was able to calm my cousin down, telling her it wasn't real. and she had just fell asleep and had a nightmare. However, I knew in my mind it was completely real. My parents had rung me up and told me they were going to be out all night, so this was a perfect opportunity to best look at that DVD more closely. I didn't mention it to them as soon as I hung up. I grabbed the DVD before opening it on my laptop. As soon as it loaded up, I noticed that the episode 4 had now been replaced with "Rip, Mommy and Daddy," which sent a deep chill down my back. Since my cousin was now asleep, I plugged in my earbuds so I could hear it. My cousin was now asleep, and I plugged in my earbuds so she can sleep now, without having to hear anything. Normally, an episode of Max and Ruby would feature 3 short stories, but this episode only had 1. It started off quite happy. Max and Ruby were playing tag in the garden, and their parents were on the porch watching them play. However, something was off. The sound was playing in reverse, and the parents' faces were that of sadness. It panned to the mother and father, and in a voice of deep sorrow, the father spoke. "It's such a shame." He sighed, and it cut short to the sound of static and a loud scream followed by a sound of 2 people choking. The sounds felt so real it made me almost physically sick. The screen then switched to both Max and Ruby standing in front of a gravestone labeled "Rip, Mommy and Daddy." The 2 of them had no faces. At this point, there was also no sound apart from the faint static. The scene remained on screen for about a minute and a half before it cut away to black. It didn't change the scene again, and showing Max and Ruby sitting in Ruby's room. Both of them were sobbing, and sobs were so realistic that my heart wrenching that it sounded like it was recorded from a real person mourning. What happened next was probably the most disgusting yet the saddest thing I had ever witnessed. The scene had changed to Max sitting in his room. He was standing on a chair with a noose hanging from the ceiling. He placed the noose around his neck, and my computer screen faded to black as the static got louder, almost intensely. It cut to Ruby walking in on her brother. She let out a horrific scream as the background turned to black and the camera was panned on her face as the sound of the chair being kicked and same choking from before it began to play. The picture of Ruby's face stayed on the screen for a good 5 minutes. This time her eyes had returned as the same gaping holes. Ruby then started crying as before, and then there was no other facial features. The static slowly grew louder and drowned out the sound of her cries. The scene cut to black with a loud static. When the screen returned, Ruby was standing now on her own in the garden. She was standing by herself on her own by 2 gravestones. One was labeled "Mommy and Daddy," and the other "Rip, Little Brother." At this point, I had already been sick and was sitting all shaken. The episode seemed to have come to an end, at least as an old computer noise started playing. I was about to eject the DVD when the same image came up like it did on the TV this time. However, there was text above the 2 rabbits which said, "Death is our only release." There were no credits or anything else. It just stayed on a few seconds before the DVD finally popped out of my laptop. I sat there trying to contemplate what had just happened. In my shock and fear, I made a foolish decision to break the DVD up as much as I could before leaving the house. Afterward, I shoved the pieces down the drain. Thankfully, I kept a few screenshots and saved them to my laptop. The next couple of days went past without anything unusual happening. I had a few nightmares about the DVD, but luckily that was all on my cousin. My cousin had gone back home along with the rest of the family. It was a late night. My parents had gone out for dinner, leaving me to watch the TV. I heard what sounded like someone posting something through the door. At this point, the DVD had left my mind, since I hadn't told anyone about it. However, it all came flooding back when I looked down at the letter in front of me. It was just a messily folded up, and it said,